As y'all have heard me say before, the most important part of planning any adventure are the snacks. And if you're looking for a delicious and nutritious snack that packs a real protein punch, crack into a good source of protein with tasty, healthy, wonderful pistachios. Each 1 ounce serving of wonderful pistachios contains 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value in that one serving. It's one of the highest protein nuts out there. And that's not all. Pistachios are also known for the fiber and better for you unsaturated fats, which may help keep you feeling fuller longer. Best part, wonderful pistachios come in a variety of flavors and sizes. Perfect for enjoying with your family and friends or taking them with you on your summer adventures for those snacks we're talking about. So whether you're dropping off the kiddos or running between meetings or about to climb a mountain, fuel up with a healthy and tasty snack. Wonderful Pistachios will be your new go-to. You can check them out at wonderfulpistachios.com and learn more about how these little green wonders can power up your day. Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. But today's episode's a throwback Thursday. And yeah, it's coming out a little bit late on this Thursday night, but that's because our most recent new episode with Quinn Brett came out just last night. A little bit of a delay with the Christmas week, but this episode's awesome. Winter time is often a time of year that folks, depending on the sport you do, think that, maybe it's not the time that they go out and adventure, but replaying this episode to try to inspire folks to make sure that you stay active during these times of the year can provide some amazing wilderness experiences. Oftentimes it's quieter, a lot less people, and can just be amazing. So get out there, keep having fun, and hope you learn something from Jeff Golden here, and hope you stay inspired, and let's finish the year strong. And speaking of finishing the year strong, this Sunday, things are looking good. I'm going to attempt to paddle across the largest lake in my state on a paddleboard, Lake Okeechobee. And it's going to be pretty wild. It's 35 miles across this lake. No one's ever paddleboarded across this lake. I haven't been able to find anybody that's done it. And so it's going to be fun. Going to be me and a couple friends. And if you want to follow along, there will be a link in my Instagram. alive_adventures, Mason Gravely, just look up either one, and I'm going to be raising awareness for restoring the habitat around here, the Everglades. So that's right at the north end of the Everglades is Lake Okeechobee, and that's where a lot of the water for the Everglades comes from. So it's going to be awesome, and it's going to be a great way to finish the year, literally on the last day of the year. And, it's a lot easier to adventure down here where I am in Florida in the winter because it's our kind of nice, cool time of the year. So it's almost the same lessons I'm going to learn today with Jeff Golden. I'm going to apply in the summer here because it's so dang hot that it's like easier just to stay inside. But if you want to follow along, please do. And let's go ahead and dive in.
This is your host, Kurt Linville. Today, I have returning guest, Jeff Golden, with us. Jeff Golden works with the Colorado Mountain Club, and we interviewed Jeff all the way back on episode 54, so that's over 150 episodes ago. And Jeff really did a fantastic job of explaining what the sport of climbing 14ers is all about. So Jeff moved into New Mexico years ago and climbed his first 14er. From there, he climbed Sneffels and just fell in love with the sport, mountaineering. And one thing led to another. He ended up at the Colorado Mountain Club. Since then, he's climbed all the 14ers, most of them multiple times. And he's here today to talk about climbing them in the wintertime, which is a whole different ballgame from summer climbing of the 14ers. And I'm excited to hear about winter ascents on Colorado's 14ers. So, Jeff, welcome to the program.
Hey, yeah, thanks. Glad to be back again. It's been cool to see. Most people used to think 14ers there's 14er season. It's only in the summer. You can do it from May to September or so. But more and more people have been getting interested in climbing year round and climbing in the winter. And it is a whole different ball game, and it's super interesting to me, and it's a whole new challenge, and I'm pretty psyched just to talk to you about it.
Well, Jeff, I'm going to tell our listeners, if they want the details about 14ering as a sport, to go back to episode 54 and listen to that, because he did such a great job. We don't need to repeat all that. But for the new listeners who don't even know what a 14er is, I mean, we have listeners from all over the planet now. So just real briefly, what are 14ers and what's this all about?
Yeah, so we have, Colorado's lucky, and we have so many high peaks, and we have 14ers, which are peaks that are above 14,000 feet in elevation. Depending on who you ask, we have between 53 and 59 of them, just based on some little differing criteria. I think we went into that in episode 54 a little bit.
Sure.
Most of them, especially in the summer, are pretty gentle. You know, you can walk up. There's trails. There's crowds. It's a very popular pastime. You know, some people will just want to do a couple and scratch it off their bucket list. Some people get the bug and try and do them all. You know, people ride their bikes between them and do an entire human-powered journey. You know, some people climb them all in the summer if they're a college student or something like that. And it's just a really popular, like really cool thing to do in Colorado. You know, there's tons of blog posts and magazine articles and such talking about it. It's just getting more and more popular, and you know, for good reason. It's super fun. It's one of the best ways you can get outside in Colorado, and it's a great way to get some exercise.
You know, I would have to tell people the easier 14ers are all still serious hikes. You know, it's not for the faint of heart, but almost anybody can do a 14er if they practice some of the wisdom on how to get up a mountain. So it's something that it's a good point of entry for mountaineering for just about anybody, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, you know, I often refer to it as Mountaineering 101. You know, a lot of people will work their way through the 14ers, and it's a nice progression where you can start off with the quote unquote easiest ones, which, like you said, are still difficult. They're still at very least half-day hikes that involve, you know, 6 to 8 miles and 3,000 feet of elevation gain. But yeah, and then you work up. You know, some of them you have to scramble. They're class 3. You have to use your hands and feet and actually do some rock climbing moves. And then the most difficult ones combine some difficult moves with some exposure where there's significant risks. But most people don't use ropes. They're still all pretty much considered walk-ups in the grand scheme of mountaineering. But it's a great introduction. People that do all the 14ers regularly go on to climb Mount Rainier, climb all across the world, you know, become expert rock climbers, expert ice climbers. It's a great introduction to mountaineering, especially in Colorado.
I think it's a marvelous sport. And Jeff, I started climbing 14ers before I moved to Colorado, which is a long time ago, back in 1988. And I've, you know, checked a few off every summer since then almost, and have not climbed them all yet because I do so many other things. But it's been such a rewarding thing for me. And, you know, I did an entire episode, Jeff, on how to climb a mountain. Day trip mountaineering is what I called it. And there are a lot of details in there that people can go through to find out about summer climbing. And you and I talked about it at length in episode 54 as well. So there's lots of information on how to do this. Great resources on our website, adventuresportspodcast.com. But winter mountaineering hasn't been discussed that much, and it's really a whole different ball game. So how did you get into winter mountaineering?
So yeah, I got into winter mountaineering pretty early on in my 14ers quest. You know, I started doing 14ers, and the first summer I was in New Mexico, and then I moved up to Denver later on, and I probably had done, over the course of a year, maybe 10 to 12 14ers, and then it got to started getting cold, you know, snow arrived, and I just wanted to keep doing it. You know, I couldn't imagine a winter without this sport that I'd grown to love, that had kind of been my main passion in life for a little bit. And so I just started researching and trying to find ways to keep doing it. And sure enough, this was even only 5 or 6 years ago, and there just wasn't much information on it. At the time, there were only 3 people that had climbed all the 14ers in winter. It wasn't really a super popular endeavor, but there were resources. You know, there was 14ers.com has a lot of good information. You can sort through their trip reports by calendar dates. You can look at, you know, pick a mountain and then look for trip reports that were in the calendar winter, and you can see the routes that people have taken and such. But yeah, I just jumped right in, and you know, luckily there's some good mentors as well. I think I went on something called the Winter Welcomer Group Hike on Quandary Peak, which still happens every year. Not quite in true winter. It's in the end of October, around Halloween most years. But it's winter conditions. Usually there's snow on the ground and you have to carry all the gear. But that was my first, you know, cold weather conditions hike, and it was with a bunch of people that, like I said, they do it every year, and the purpose of it is to kind of mentor people that are new to it and help them get their gear dialed in and their, you know, learn more about safety and such. And then just later on in that year, I just dove into it. There's a ton of 14ers that you can do in the winter without much more difficulty than you can do in the summer. Some of them you can even get to the normal summer trailheads. The route's the same. You have to have the extra gear and you have to have the extra awareness and the extra knowledge, but they're not that much harder than they are in the summer. So I just kind of kept working through my 14er list. I looked at ones I hadn't done and then kind of cross-referenced that with what winter 14ers seemed manageable, what I thought I could do at the time with the people I was hiking and climbing with at the time. And, when I was that early on in my 14er climbing, like I said, I'd only probably done 10 to 12, there was a ton to choose from. And so I was able, most weekends, to find a peak that was reasonable, when the weather agreed with me, and just keep going. And I did that until I finished the 14ers. I climbed year round, mostly just trying to do the initial list. I count 58. And then for a brief period, winter 14ers became my next goal, and I cranked them out for the next 2 winters. I think, that was just kind of what I was dedicating my recreational life to. And you get to a point with the winter 14ers, which I think we'll probably get into a little bit, where it's not, a lot of mountaineering, a lot of being outdoors in general is about mitigating risk and choosing good weather windows and avoiding avalanche danger and just doing all these things you can to reduce the risk to as close to zero as possible. But especially as you get into the more difficult 14ers in winter, that's just not possible. You have to cross avalanche paths. You have to, put yourself out there a little bit more than I was willing to. So, I've done 25 in winter now, and I'll probably keep plugging away. I could see myself doing between 40 and 45 in winter over the course of my mountaineering life, but it's not something that I think I'll ever finish, because there are some, like I said, there's the objective hazards are too high, and there's no way to reduce those risks to nil. So, it's fun. It's manageable. People kind of look at it as something that's so far out there and difficult and cold that it's unattainable, but it's really not, especially if you've done a handful of 14ers in the summer. It's a good logical step to keep on mountaineering.
So, Jeff, we talked on the last show when you were on a lot about weather in the summer climbing, and lightning is the biggest challenge, although you can have freak snowstorms and cold rainstorms and stuff like that. What kind of weather challenges do you have to worry about in the wintertime? I know it's got to be different.
Yeah, so it changes completely where you're not so worried about lightning. A lightning storm is very rare in the winter. As it goes on into March, as winter comes to a close, maybe you have a chance. It's called thunder snow is the phenomenon where it's a snowstorm with lightning and thunder, but it's really not a concern in winter. You're more worried about obviously snow and cold. And the biggest weather concern for me, honestly, with winter 14ers is the wind. There's just something about Colorado and the 14ers. I've heard, I'm not a weatherman, so I don't want to get into the science of it too much, but I've heard that the way the jet stream works is basically the top of our peaks, the 13,000, 14,000 foot peaks are actually jutting up into the jet stream. So you're getting these extreme winds almost all the time. It's not uncommon to check a forecast for a winter 14er and see winds that are 50, 60 miles an hour, gusting to 90. It's like a hurricane up there, and you can get nice days. I've had perfectly clear days where there's no wind. It's beautiful. You're out there in the middle of January in a t-shirt. But most of the time that's not the case. That only happens a couple times every winter. You usually have to deal with at least a moderate wind. 10, 20 miles an hour is kind of a good weather day in the winter. And when you combine that with the cold, you get wind chills that are routinely below zero. So just staying warm is the biggest concern, and finding ways to battle that wind. And obviously, it's going to snow, especially up high. But what you really have to watch out for with the snow is one, visibility and navigation. You always have to know where you're going and what you have to do to get back down to where you were, especially if you're caught in a whiteout or something where you can't see anything. And then you have to be aware of the avalanche conditions and how they're changing. But yeah, the biggest hassle to me in the winter is just that wind. And you have to carry enough gear to cover literally every exposed inch of skin if needed. You have to have goggles, you have to have a balaclava or some sort of face mask, a nice soft shell or hard shell that really cuts that wind. Multiple layers, down, synthetic, fleece, wool, whatever you need to make sure you're staying warm enough. And I always carry mittens as the last resort. Most of the time you're fine in gloves, and I carry gloves on every winter hike too. But when that wind really starts kicking and the wind chill gets down there below zero, mittens have saved my hands on more than one occasion.
One thing that I've noticed is people are worried about the cold, so they take a lot of warm weather gear. Good idea. But man, if you're too warm and you start to sweat, and then you get a little higher up and you start to cool back down and you're wet, and that's killer.
Yeah, it's kind of a rule of thumb is you're not supposed to sweat when you're hiking in the winter. And, in reality, you're going to, especially if it's a somewhat warm day and you're going uphill and you're snowshoeing through deep snow, sweat's kind of inevitable. But you have to manage that as much as you can. And I always try to go at a slow enough pace where, even if you're sweating a little bit, which you really can avoid some days, you don't want to be drenched. You don't want to be pouring sweat like maybe you would be in the summer. You want to manage that, shed layers, make sure you're not overheating, because if your base layer gets soaking wet, even if it's a nice synthetic base layer and will dry in an hour or less, you're still, if you get up above tree line and you're wet and your clothes are wet and the wind starts kicking and the temperature drops a little bit, then it is not a good time. I can speak from experience.
Yeah, so I think the layer idea is a good idea, and I've heard some people say that layering may not be the warmest option. And I think in some circumstances they have a point. But man, when it comes to being active and then slowing down, maybe you take a break. I think you have to have layers that you can trade out quickly so you don't get too hot, and then when you slow down, you have a way to stay warm.
Yeah, and there's this whole genre of gear called, it's kind of known as the belay puffy. Basically it's just saying a super warm, the warmest down or synthetic coat that you have. And I always keep mine really easily accessible. A lot of times, I honestly don't wear it much other than if I'm hiking down at night and the temperature's dropped significantly, or if I'm hanging out on the summit for a little bit. That's most of the time where I wear my belay puffy. But I do keep it accessible, because when you stop and sit down, if you want to sit down for 10 minutes and drink some hot chocolate and eat a sandwich, you're going to cool off rapidly. So having that go-to just super warm layer that you can trust is one of the most critical things you can do.
Well, you know what? We kind of steered into gear here. Why don't we just go ahead and talk about the winter gear? We're talking about having lots of layers and warm clothes and that sort of thing, but give us a checklist. What would you say are the imperatives if you're going to climb a 14er in the wintertime?
Sure. So first of all, the 10 essentials, everything you would carry in the summer. And there's plenty of information online, and I'm sure it's probably been covered in several podcasts, but that's kind of the baseline. So carry everything you would normally in summer. You're probably going to need a little bit bigger pack. I carry depending on the day and the length, between a 30 and a 45 liter pack in winter, just because you have so much more stuff, and especially some of the coats that take up more, they're bulkier and take up more room even when they're compressed. But I hike a little bit warmer than most people. So my layers, some people look at me like I'm crazy, and I look back at them like they're crazy with their 2 extra jackets. But I like a normal synthetic base layer t-shirt. And then a nice thin or medium weight fleece pullover. And that's kind of my normal outfit when I'm hiking uphill. Even if it's a little bit cold or a little bit windy, my body just is hot enough where I'm usually pretty comfortable in that, just the fleece layer. But I also carry a mid-weight synthetic jacket that I put on if snow rolls in or it just gets a little cold or a little windy. And then on top of that, I'll usually have a soft shell. If I'm expecting a lot of snow, I'll bring a hard shell or some sort of hybrid. But most days, I just want that soft shell to cut into the wind. You're not even that worried. Even if it is snowing a little bit, our snow here in Colorado is so dry, the soft shell does the job 90% of the time. And then I carry that magical belay puffy, which is, like I said, absolutely critical. It's not something, you can save money on gear in many different ways, but definitely splurge and buy a super nice 800 fill heavy, down parka, because it's just one of those things that, I'd gladly trade money for comfort. And it's something that's just super nice to know that you have at the top of your pack if you're going to stop for a break, or if you get up to the summit and you want to take some photos and hang out for 10 or 15 minutes. Just having that just bomber puffy that you can trust is awesome. And then lower down, I again, soft shell pants usually get the job done for me over just a normal like mid-weight. Sometimes if it's super cold, like a full expedition weight base layer. And then I'll carry some hard shell pants in my pack. And I'll be honest with you, in 5 winters of winter climbing, I think I put them on once. And I think even that was just to glissade. But it's nice to know that if I need that extra leg layer, if I'm super cold or if it's super windy, or, if there's an accident and I have to spend a night out or sit in the snow for an extended period of time, having that extra layer of waterproof pants is a nice just part of the emergency kit. Boots are interesting because a lot of people think they have to get like $400 or $500 ice climbing boots, the bright yellow or the bright orange ones you see at RAI in the mountaineering boot section. But honestly, a lot of times for these winter 14ers, you want to get something that's warmer and more comfortable. It's basically a summer hiking boot like you would take on a backpacking trip, with some insulation thrown in and some additional waterproofing to keep the snow out. And they make quality, pretty much every brand of boots makes quality winter hiking boots for between $100 and $300. You don't have to go all in on these really fancy mountaineering boots. I will say, if you see yourself getting into something like wanting to climb Mount Rainier or wanting to get into ice climbing, then it's probably worth it to just go ahead and splurge on those expensive mountaineering boots, because they last forever. But if all you want to do is go out and hike in the winter and do some winter 14ers, you can get all sorts of boots. Just make sure they're waterproof. Make sure they come up to your ankle, at least, if not a little bit higher. And make sure they have insulation. Just make sure they're warm. And most of the tags when you're buying them, or if you go to any retail shop, the salespeople should be able to direct you right to those. But yeah, I do almost all of my winter hiking in a pair of, I think, $200 La Sportiva Frost, I think they're called. And they're much warmer and more comfortable. I do a lot of ice climbing too. And whenever I can avoid wearing those heavy, really rigid ice climbing boots on a hike, I do. So, just a nice pair of warm boots goes a long way.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. This episode is brought to us by Oris Watches. A piece of equipment on any adventure that I'm honestly surprised by how much I use is my watch. And I'm wearing a watch right now. I always have a watch on. And I believe that you should check out Oris Watches. Oris is a 119-year-old family-owned independent watch brand based out of Hallstein, Switzerland. The brand has been certified climate and carbon neutral since 2021, and every year releases a sustainability report. Oris only makes mechanical watches like the new Pro Pilot X Caliber 400 and the new Pro Pilot Altimeter featuring a 3D printed carbon case. If you're a fan of mechanical watches like I am, there's nothing in the game that's better than Oris, and you can discover the full Oris collection at a retailer near you or at oris.ch. So if you want that one piece of equipment in your life to be functional, to be useful, to be beautiful, artistic, check out Oris Watches. Oris, go your own way. As y'all know, podcasting is not what I do full time. My day job, we use Shopify. And we're one of the fastest growing companies in the country, and we trust Shopify with what we do. It is so easy to use. It is so easy to set up because Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, whether you're a startup or a mature company. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage, all the way to, did we just hit 1 million orders stage? Shopify is there to help you grow. And I have experienced Shopify at all those stages. They even have in-person POS systems when you're ready for brick and mortar. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to other leading commerce platforms. And what I like about it, it's a one-time solution. You don't have to use it now and then switch to something once you get bigger. They will grow with you, and they have folks to help you all along the way of that growth. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ASP, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/ASP now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/ASP. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Do you recommend crampons and an ice axe, or do you prefer snowshoes, or do you just go with bare boots?
So a lot of people get confused when they think winter mountaineering. They equate that with crampons and ropes and ice axes and such. And absolutely, I'll always carry an ice axe. My rule of thumb is if there's snow on the ground, carry an ice axe, even if it's getting into June or something, just because you never know when you might have to traverse a slope or encounter a random patch of snow. And ice axes are obviously a life-saving tool. But to be honest, winter 14er climbing is much more snowshoes, bare boots, and if anything, micro spikes than it is crampons. A lot of times the slopes that are steep enough to warrant crampons and ice axes and ice tools are prime avalanche territory. So what you're trying to do mostly is avoid those areas. I've hardly ever, doing a winter 14er, worn crampons. Those are much more a spring tool. They're more for actual, technical ice climbing. Yeah, for sure. Snowshoes, and then those micro spikes, which are basically really lightweight trail crampons, are the way to go most of the time. I hardly ever even carry crampons on a winter 14er.
Well, in my experience, snowshoes have been adequate, and they come with a nice crampon type claw on the bottom of them anyway. But one tip for people that haven't done it: if you're trying to go up a slope that's a little bit steeper and the snowshoes start to slide on you, you can kick steps in, and not horizontal steps, but actually make your toe go down into the snow, and then the snowshoes will take you right on up. It works pretty well for me anyway.
Yeah, and you can get specialized snowshoes. They tend to be the higher end models, the more expensive ones, but they have this little wonderful contraption called a heel lift, where if you're going up a steep slope, say 25, 30 degrees, right below that normal avalanche threshold, it really starts to kill your calves and make your legs tired. But you can just pop up this little bar that goes right underneath your heel, and it basically just saves you that motion, and it makes it seem like the ground is a lot less steep than it actually is. So I recommend anybody that if you're in the market for snowshoes and you want to get into this sort of thing where you're going to be doing steep trails, climbing in snowshoes, definitely invest in a pair that has that heel lift.
We climbed Parnassus last winter and had a ball doing that, and it's a 13er, not a 14er, but one of the climbers on the way up was just bushed and was getting some altitude sickness, and he didn't have that belay puffy, The situation was that he was getting altitude sickness, and he just said, you know what, guys, I think I'm just going to wait here, and you guys go ahead and summit and come back, and I'll just wait for you guys. But it was really, really cold and really, really windy, and he didn't have adequate gear to sit still. He was okay if he was moving, and generating heat, but I looked at him and I said, nah, dude, you're going to be hypothermic in 5 minutes. And so that's the one piece of gear that I picked out of your list there that I thought, man, that is really an important piece of safety equipment. In the end, we were close enough to the summit. I said, well, just go a little farther. Let's see how you do. And he was fine. He summited and had a great time and came back down. But I was not willing to leave him there alone without something like that to protect him.
Yeah, and it's I think we talked a little bit in my earlier podcast, episode 54, where you want to carry enough to where you feel comfortable that you could survive a night out if you needed to. If you rolled an ankle and couldn't get out and rescuers couldn't get to you, you have to be able to survive whatever elements you're in. And I think, again, like a super nice belay jacket, belay puffy, just goes a long way in just making sure you can stay warm enough. And that's it's just a nice peace of mind knowing that if you do get stuck out after dark, or if you have to stop and sit still for an hour or two, just to know that you're not going to be freezing, that you're going to be maybe comfortable isn't the word, but you're going to be surviving, and you're not putting yourself in a dangerous situation.
I'm not sure that we're selling the sport all that much, talking about how cold it is and how dangerous it can be and that kind of stuff. So why do you do it? Why would you climb a 14er in the wintertime? It sounds kind of extreme.
Yeah, well, I think you'll probably agree with me on this. I think one of the biggest perks is that you avoid all of the crowds that are getting more and more prevalent on all the 14ers, especially the easier, more accessible ones to the Front Range cities. So you go out in the winter, if you do Quandary Peak on an August Saturday, you're going to be doing it with 200, 300 of your closest friends. And if you do that same hike on a January Saturday, you're going to see 4 or 5 other people. Maybe it's getting more popular, maybe 10 to 12, but it's nowhere near the zoo of the summer 14ers. So just having that true solitude and being out there in nature and being with yourself and your group and the people you're with, and really just having that true wilderness experience that's getting harder and harder to find in Colorado is just an awesome perk. I personally think the mountains are just so much more beautiful when there's snow on them. The pictures are better. You're out there and you're on the summit taking in all the views. And I mean, they're gorgeous in the summer too when there's no snow, but just the snow, the white, the contrast between the white snow and the dark rocks, it just makes everything pop a little bit more in my mind. And it's just so much prettier. And then even below tree line, you're down there in the trees and the pines and the dead aspens, and you have like the snow on the limbs and coming down on the branches, and everything's just so quiet and still. And it's just such a cool experience that you can't really get in the summer. And it's just like the 14ers in general. It's a cool personal challenge. You get a lot of fulfillment out of taking something that when you're first introduced to the concept of climbing a 14er and then later, climbing a 14er in winter, for a lot of people, myself included, it seemed like such a far off goal, borderline, impossible or something that would take a lot of training and time to really do. And then to go out there and put forth the effort and put forth the research and and go up there and do it, just the feeling of accomplishment is something it's almost impossible to describe, but it's just one of the best feelings in the world for sure.
I am totally with you on the beauty in the wintertime, man. The first winter 14er that I did was Elbert, the tallest 14er in Colorado. And it was a very cold day, and the wind was just kicking. Matter of fact, I have a picture of myself leaning into the wind about 45 degrees. I mean, it was nuts. The wind was probably getting close to 100. So it was not an ideal climbing day, but man, we got to the summit of Elbert, and looking out across the Sawatch Range, peak after peak after peak, as far as the eye could see in all directions, just white and caked with snow. I had never seen anything like that before, Jeff. And that was one of those moments that I would actually say was life changing. It impacted me so much. It was like, yeah, no, this is what living is about. I've got to make sure I always get these experiences into my life.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just, I don't think there's a way you can describe it without doing it. So I don't know if there's a stronger endorsement to just, if this is something that you're contemplating, if you've done a couple 14ers in the summer and it's something you've loved and enjoyed and you need an extra little, kick in the butt to go try one, I think we're selling it pretty good now.
Right on. So let's talk about how difficult, as far as strenuous it is. In the summertime, okay, it's a tough hike, right? Tough hike with altitude. So what about in the wintertime?
Yeah, so the main thing is that, you think of these summer 14ers and you're getting to the trailhead and you're driving, 5 or 10 miles down this little dirt road in your four-wheel drive vehicle to get to the trailhead. Those roads are not plowed and they are totally covered in the winter. So you just have that extra distance. For a lot of them, there are a couple, which I'll touch on later, that you can actually get to their summer trailhead in the winter, but almost all of them, you're looking at least a couple extra miles of just walking along a road to get to the summer trailheads that aren't accessible in the winter. So yeah, it's just extra distance, which obviously comes with some extra elevation gains. So you take a long hike in the summer and you make it even longer in the winter. You add in, whether you're on snowshoes or a backcountry ski setup, whatever your flotation system is to make sure you're not wallowing in the snow. No matter what it is, it's a little bit of extra exertion and you just move a little bit slower. Things take more time in the winter because snowshoeing, I mean, it just takes longer. It's more effort. It's slower. And especially if you go out, after a recent storm, if there's new snow on the ground and it's called breaking your own trench. You're walking forward in snowshoes and if somebody has gone before you, you're basically just following in their track, and it's almost just like walking. It's not any more difficult than walking in plain boots without the snowshoes. But a lot of times, if you're out there on your own, you're the one that's making that trench. You're the one packing down the snow, and that's just a whole nother level of exertion. And that's why a lot of times, people will travel in groups of 2 to 4 or more in the winter. And that person in the lead is doing like twice as much work as the people behind them. So you switch off like every 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, depending on how strong the lead person is, and just share that duty of trail breaking, because that is just killer. It's so much more, it takes so much more energy. It burns your legs, and only the strongest of climbers, the most in shape, hardcore, diehard climbers can go out there solo and break trail for hours on their own. That's why having partners and having friends is even more important and fun in the winter to cut down on that trail breaking.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I kind of chuckle because I remember watching my nephew who's, he's 6 feet tall and about 210 pounds, and it's all muscle. And I was watching him break trail with snow up to almost his waist. And man, it'll stop you. Even if you're a big, strong, powerful person, then breaking trail is tough. That's tough.
Yeah, I had an experience when I climbed Mount Evans in December a couple of years back, and it was me and this one girl was my partner, and it was fine going for most of the time. We got to this one section, the last maybe 500 feet up to tree line, and once you're above tree line, a lot of these 14ers are more or less windswept. The snow becomes much less deep. Most people will take off their snowshoes and either carry them on their back or stash them once you're above tree line, because you just don't need them anymore. You're on the rock, or the snow is more hard packed. But yeah, we were at this last 500 feet up to tree line, and it took us, I'm not kidding, it was probably 3/4 of a mile and 500 feet, and it took us a solid 2.5 hours of just hip deep snow, even in snowshoes. I mean, every step took 10 seconds.
The thing I love about it, Jeff, and you can attest to this, I'm sure, is that to beat the lightning in the summer means you're getting up really early sometimes to start, well before daylight. In the wintertime, really the only concern is, can I get down before dark? Yeah,
and that is one of the nicer things about winter 14ers, is you don't have to for the shorter ones, for the ones that you don't think will take more than 6 to 8 hours, you don't have to wake up and start at 5 in the morning. You can start at first light, be it 7 or 8 a.m. It's known among people that do winter 14ers a lot as a gentleman start, just getting a little bit later, sleeping in a little bit more. The caveat is the day is much shorter. You don't have daylight until 9 p.m. anymore. It gets dark at 4:30 or 5. And so you just have to plan for that. And it's just kind of a fact of life that you just know you'll probably be descending by headlamp, but you try to plan around that by saying, I want to be back on the road, or I want to be back to the solid trench that I made this morning by the time it gets dark. So that way it's just an easy, you turn on your headlamp and just cruise out. There's no route finding. There's no worry of getting lost. You're just following a very easy navigational aid, whatever it is. But yeah, I normally, just because it's so dang cold, I usually start most of my winter 14ers around sunrise is what I try and time it for. But just accept the fact that I'm probably going to be coming down in the dark.
Sure. Well, here's a question for you. I had an experience last winter that I hadn't had before, and I don't want to ever have again, and that was it was cold enough that my water bottle froze. So I ended up mountaineering for about 9 hours without water. And I could have stopped and melted snow. We had the gear with us to do that, but we were just wanting to keep going. And by the time we got back down, man, I was so dehydrated, it was actually dangerous. How do you keep your water from freezing? What do you do?
So yeah, there's multiple techniques, and that's certainly I think something that's probably happened to everybody at some point who does this kind of thing. My first rule of thumb, and some people will disagree with me, and I think they're wrong, but you just don't use a normal like Camelback or like hydration bladder, the tube, because it's so constricted, it's so small. It happens almost every like first time winter 14er hiker I've seen that's used those Camelback bladders has the same issue where it freezes in the tube. And even though the water is accessible, it's in your bladder inside your pack. The tube, the water in the tube is frozen solid. There are ways to get around that. They make insulating tubes for those hydration bladder tubes. People say you can just blow, when you're done drinking, just blow all the water back out. But I'll tell you, when it gets super cold, even those insulating tubes for those hydration bladders, they don't really work. You can shove it inside your own jacket and figure out ways to jerry rig it, but I think it's a little bit more hassle than it's worth. And just to say, those hydration bladders are great for the summer, but in the winter you're back to your standard Nalgene's or water bottles. And what I usually do is I get those little insulating covers. You can get them for like $10 or $15 at any outdoor store that basically just provides an insulating cover for water bottles, and it keeps them a little bit warmer. One little technique you can use is you can, like, say you have one of those Nalgene insulators. They usually have a little carabiner and something where you can hook it to an outside of a pack, so it's always accessible, kind of like those hydration bladders. You can always reach it with your hand and get a drink of water whenever you want without having to take off your pack or whatnot. But if you put the water bottle in those insulating tubes upside down, it just keeps it from freezing a little bit. That helps. Adding in just energy drink mix, something that makes the water a little bit more, I guess dense is the word. I don't know. It makes the freezing points a little bit lower. I know some people that add just not much, but like a splash of vodka, because that lowers the freezing point. So there are some techniques there. And then just to make sure that I always have something to drink, something to hydrate myself, even if something, if I have an Nalgene in my pack in an insulating cover, I don't think that would ever freeze. But just in case it ever did, I always carry a thermos of hot tea as well, which will I can't think of a scenario where that would freeze. The thermos I have keeps it steaming hot for like 8 hours. So that's just a good way to make sure you always have something to drink. But yeah, there's all sorts of techniques. What I usually do, like I said, is just use those Nalgene insulators, some hot tea, and then I usually mix in some like Gatorade mix or something just to make sure the freezing point is a little bit lower.
The idea that you just said about putting your water bottle upside down, I think that's great advice. I think that's part of where I messed up. I like the Nalgene bottles with the small top instead of the big top, but that small top can freeze solid. And that was part of my problem, is I had my water bottle right side up, which means that water freezes from the top down. So where did it freeze first? Right in that narrow neck where I needed to get a drink. So I just locked out all the water that was in the bottle. But if I had turned it upside down like you said, then it would have, if it froze, it would have started freezing on the bottom, not the top.
Yep, exactly. That's the idea behind it.
That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, it sounds like there's an awful lot to this beyond summer 14ering, but it sounds like it's a lot of fun and very rewarding too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's basically taking all of the things you've learned from winter 14ers and adding doubling the amount of gear and knowledge you need, but it's certainly accessible once you're comfortable doing summer 14ers. Winter 14ers are certainly something that's within anybody's grasp. It's an expensive sport. It's something you have to buy a lot of gear for. The boots and the belay puffy on their own are probably going to be a $500 investment, even if you find a good deal. So it's not cheap by any means, but you can accrue gear as you go. And it's something that if you really want to do, it's definitely worth the investment. And the gear lasts forever. Once you buy it once, you might want to upgrade or get something more jazzy, but the things you have typically work for years and years.
Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Well, it's cool because you don't have to buy a lift ticket to do it. Once you're geared up, then, it's free to go.
Exactly.
That's fun. Tell us a little bit about special safety concerns. You mentioned avalanche terrain a little bit, but I always like to talk about that. It is probably one of the most dangerous things about mountaineering. So what about avalanches?
Sure. So especially for the beginner or the easiest or more accessible of the winter 14ers, most of the reason those are considered the easier ones and the ones that people do first are because there are easy or obvious routes where you can avoid any avalanche danger whatsoever. When you get into talking about difficulty and the most difficult winter 14ers, there's scrambling and there's climbing and there's exposure just like in the summer, but you're really adding in just the inevitability of avalanche danger and crossing avalanche paths. But the best thing you can do, and I would recommend it if there's one takeaway from this entire podcast is don't go out in the winter in the mountains where you might encounter avalanche slopes without at least taking something called an avalanche awareness course. And they're offered from many different organizations, many of them for free. Most of them are 1 to 2 hours. It's not a huge commitment, but you really get at least an introduction to an understanding of what you're looking for, what you're looking at, how avalanches work, and most importantly, what exact terrain to avoid. The Colorado Mountain Club, my employer, we have several avalanche awareness courses, Boulder, Denver, Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, kind of all over. The Colorado Avalanche Information Center, CAIC, does several every winter. Friends of Berthoud Pass is a local nonprofit that does free avalanche awareness clinics across the Front Range, pretty much, I would say almost a couple times a month during the winter. There's all sorts of organizations that are offering this kind of very introductory level training for avalanches, and I would strongly recommend going to one before you even go snowshoeing. If we're not even talking about winter 14ers, but before you get out in the winter, having that basic introduction to avalanches is critical. And then you can go up from there. You can get an avalanche level 1 certification, which usually costs between $200 and $300, and just gives a much more in-depth. It's usually several classroom sessions with some field days where you're out there actually studying the snow and getting to know it a little bit more. You can go up into avalanche level 2, where you actually get much more in depth into the science of it, which is where a lot of backcountry skiers and ski mountaineers, the people that are out there specifically targeting avalanche terrain. The slopes that are the most fun to ski in the winter are also the most avalanche prone. So they really have to know how to dig a snow pit and know what they're looking at and know how the layers are bonding and all this sciencey stuff. So depending on what you want to do, there's all sorts of levels of avalanche education you can get. But at a very basic level, there's really no excuse not to go to one of these avalanche awareness seminars. They're either free or they're under $100. They're very affordable. They only last 1 to 3 hours, I would say. Some of them that you have to pay for are probably like 3 hours and then have a field day on the weekend or something. But it's just basically teaching you how to avoid avalanche terrain, what to look for, and how to get around it. And it's just absolutely essential knowledge to have if you're going to do any kind of backcountry recreation in the winter.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. It's really important. And I always say this, I've said it over and over again on the show. A lot of people in Colorado are aware of the dangers because, the fatalities hit the news here every winter, but people from out of state don't always know. And we have an awful lot of listeners from around the world. So if you come to Colorado and you want to go into the backcountry in the wintertime, realize that it's not just a walk in the park. You have to have some skills to stay safe. So just want to always try to get the word out about that.
Yeah, and it's something you really have to stay constantly vigilant about. You always have to keep your head on a swivel and be assessing the snowpack and looking up at what slopes you're about to cross under, or down at what slopes you're about to go over. And a lot of accidents, unfortunately. We had a bad accident at, I think it was Loveland Pass about 2 years ago, where a whole group of skiers was buried and killed. And they were all educated. They all had extensive avalanche training, and they just walked under a slope where they could have walked 100 feet in the other direction and just skirted the slope and been in a completely safe terrain. But it's just, I wasn't there. I don't know what was happening, but it's just something you always, every 5 minutes you're an avalanche terrain, you have to be looking around and assessing and trying to figure out what kind of dangers are presenting themselves, and just always know where you are in relation to an avalanche path.
Yeah, it's kind of tricky stuff. We skied Loveland Pass a few years ago. I think it was the same year as the accident that you're talking about. And when we were there, the snow was consolidated. There was no real risk. And we had a great time. And then a few weeks later, the sun had created a slide layer and a big heavy snow came down. And these guys you're talking about got in trouble. So the weather matters, the day matters, the snow conditions matter. And the snow conditions change with altitude. So what's good where you are might be absolutely lousy, 500 verts higher. So just telling people, get the education and know what you're doing.
Yeah, and just one more plug for the CAIC, the Colorado Avalanche Information Center. They publish daily avalanche forecasts that are zoned, so where they have them, for the Swatch Range, for the Sangre de Cristo Range, for the Elk Range. And so you can go in, and I try to make a habit. Most people, they sit down at their desk in the morning and they have a habit of reading, they check a couple sites, and then they get on with their workday. And I always incorporate CAC's daily forecast into my morning reading, just even if it's a Tuesday and I'm not even going to get out that weekend, just to know what the snowpack is doing, how it's being affected by storms, by wind, all that kind of stuff. And just having a working knowledge of what's exactly happening with the snow is it's a powerful tool.
That's a cool part about adventure sports is it's not just when you're out doing the sport that you get to enjoy it. What you're talking about, it's fun. Keeping track of what's going on out in the mountains and kind of having an idea, even when you can't go up yourself. That's what I love about adventure sports. You can enjoy them in all sorts of different ways, even when you're not doing them.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely agree.
CAIC, is that .org or .com? What's their URL? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I usually just Google it.
All right, I'll look it up. Tell you what, here's what I would like to know next. Tell us a story about just an amazing day of winter climbing on a 14er. What was it like? Tell us about some of the experiences you had along the way.
Yeah, so there's a couple, but to choose one, I did Mount Massive, which is the second highest peak in Colorado. It's just a hair below Mount Elbert, and it's right next to it. It's a very impressive peak to look at. It lives up to its name, for sure, of being massive. And there's a really long route. I can't remember the exact statistics of mileage and elevation gain, but it starts pretty much in the town of Leadville. It starts from the Leadville Fish Hatchery, and we go up. And the reason this trip stands out is it's been one of the few that I've actually incorporated like a backcountry winter camp. So we had our full heavy, like 60-pound packs with our four-season tents and 0-degree sleeping bags and all of our gear. And we hiked in several miles and camped right at Treeline. And just the experience of camping in the summer is amazing, and it's being out there in nature and everything. But in the winter, it's just, like I said, it's so quiet and so calm, and it just feels like everything kind of crystallizes, figuratively and literally, I guess. And just having that experience of feeling truly out there. We're out there in the middle of winter. There's no ATVs or hunters or other people hiking or camping or whatnot. It's us within like a 6-mile radius probably. And then the next day, we almost didn't go on the trip because the wind forecast was one of those really heinous days of being like 60 mile an hour sustained with gusts close to 100 or something. And
that's tough.
Yeah, well, this is kind of the epitome of the story, where sometimes you can look at a weather forecast and you just kind of have to go and see for yourself sometimes, and be totally willing to turn around if you have to. But we saw the forecast and we'd been planning the trip for a few weeks, and we're like, well, let's just, worst case scenario, we'll go have a fun winter camp and go trod just above tree line and then tuck tail and run. It'll still be a fun weekend outside. But we got up, and it just so happened that the wind was blowing in exactly the right direction. And Mount Massive is so massive that the wind was literally blowing from the other side of the mountain, and I guess getting pushed up and to where our side, we were on the east ridge of Mount Massive. We had almost no wind whatsoever. It was a clear, sunny day, and we could hear the wind, on the surrounding peaks and coming over the top of the summit. And it sounded like a jet engine, but where we were, it was almost hot. We were wearing like t-shirts and sweating, but it was really cool. It was a long route. I can't remember many times where I've been more exhausted than I was, and I got up to within the last couple hundred feet of the summit, and my buddy was already up there, and he was like, hooting and hollering and encouraging me to finish off. And you get up there and you can just see the wind on all the peaks, and to be sheltered, it felt almost like we were in a little bubble. It was kind of a bizarre experience, but I've never. The reason this trip stands out, I think, is I've never seen anything like that. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen a sea of peaks that are being blasted by 100-mile-an-hour winds, but it just looked like 100 Mount Everest with their snow plumes coming off of them, and we were up there. We were on the second highest peak in Colorado at 14,400 and something feet, and just to look around and just take in like just absorb the extent of Mother Nature, sitting there and just admiring the sheer power of what we were watching, and to know that we put in so much work and had a super cold night camping, and that we, even before the trip, we were like, oh, we probably have like a 10% chance of actually summiting with this absurd forecast. And to actually, accomplish our goal was just such like you said earlier, it's just such a life-fulfilling accomplishment.
Yeah, man, that sounds delightful. I know exactly what you're talking about when you get up there and you see things that you just don't see any other way. And it really is impactful. What an amazing experience it is to get up there. That's so cool. So I wanted to ask you about access. You mentioned that a lot of the 14ers you just can't hardly get to in the wintertime. Which ones can you get to? What would you recommend if people want to try it?
Sure. So there's several. I kind of always point people in the direction of three. There's certainly, there's probably 10 to 12 that you can do without a ton of extra effort as opposed to the summer. But when people are asking me, I want to do a 14er in the winter, which one should I try? There's three I always point out. And the first one is Quandary Peak, which is one of the ones you point people toward that if they want to do their first 14 in the summer, it's the same thing. And the main reason being is the Quandary trailhead for that mountain's East Ridge, the standard route that everybody does, is you can access it in the winter. There's no extra road walking. There's nothing. It's all plowed. The trailhead starts in basically a residential neighborhood. So the same level of exertion in terms of mileage and elevation gain that you have to do in the summer is the same in the winter. So Quandary is a great one to start with. It follows basically the crest of the East Ridge, so it avoids almost any avalanche danger. There's certain days for sure after a big storm where avalanche danger is heightened, where something could slide on the East Ridge, and there's a bowl right there. If you're hiking up the East Ridge of Quandary, on the right is a big bowl of snow that you want to avoid. But if you stay on the summer trail, if you stay on the East Ridge proper without venturing off route, basically, there's almost no avalanche danger. So basically, Quandary is as easy in the winter as it is in the summer, just adding in the extra gear and then the weather elements, which not to minimize those, but it's just kind of Quandary is unique in that you don't have to add any extra mileage or elevation gain. The other one is Mount Bierstadt, which you do have to park a little bit lower. I forget the name of the campground, but if you're driving up Guanella Pass from Georgetown, there's a campground you get to that's about 1.75 miles short of the actual summit of Guanella Pass, and they plow the road to there every winter, so you can get to that trailhead. And then from there, you're just walking up the road of Guanella Pass it adds about 3.5 miles round trip. But Mount Bierstadt is already kind of a short hike. It's like 6 or 7 miles and 3,000 feet or something. So even with the added distance in the winter, with the decreased access, it's still only like 10 or 11 miles and maybe like 3,500 feet, it's nothing to sneeze at. But in the grand scheme of winter 14ers, it's still pretty mellow. And the west slopes that you climb up, the standard route of Mount Bierstadt, are generally pretty windswept. I've done that peak 2 or 3 times in the winter now, and a lot of times once you're above tree line, once you're above the willow section, you're actually climbing up the flanks of the mountain. You're just in your boots, maybe some micro spikes, but it's so windswept. There's hardly any avalanche danger in most conditions, and even in a lot of places there's hardly even much snow. You're just on the tundra and the rock. And the third one, just to throw a bone to the people down in Colorado Springs, is Pikes Peak, not by the standard bar trail route, which is still open in winter, but super long, like 25 miles or something round trip. But if you go over to the backside and start from the Crags trailhead and follow the winter route from that at Pikes Peak, it's about 9 miles and 4,000, maybe 4,500 feet. But it's a doable day trip that, again, avoids almost all avalanche danger. The upper half of the route, once you get up toward Devil's Playground, you're literally just walking on the side of the Pikes Peak Highway, which they keep open year round. So, especially if you're worried about trying a winter 14er and you're unsure if you have enough gear, or you're unsure if you're in shape enough, or you're unsure about the dangers, and you want to kind of mitigate that as much as you can. You go hike Pikes Peak from the Crags trailhead, and do it on a day when the highway's open, when there's good weather, or they're running the tram up to the summit. And then, if you find yourself in trouble, there's always rangers, or you can get to the summit house and try to negotiate, taking the tram down or something. But the gist of it is that there are other people around. You're not out there entirely on your own or with your own group. So those are the three that I threw out there as beginner winter 14ers.
It's nice with Pikes Peak that you have that kind of fallback plan B. That's cool. So it would be a good one for people to try who are just a little bit antsy about whether this is their thing or not. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and I would still always say, be self-sufficient. Don't count on other people or finding somebody else. But they do keep that road open as much as they can in the winter. If there's a big snowstorm or a big windstorm, they close it down. They keep the tram running as much as they can. So if you pick a good weather day and you know that people are driving up the road, or the train is running, then you can even get it. One of the most bizarre experiences I've had on a winter 14er is the first time I did pikes from Crags in the winter. There's another one of those just obscenely windy days, and me and my one partner were hiking up, and we're covered head to toe. We're wearing like all these layers, and I have a balaclava on and goggles, and it's just been like a hellacious couple hours hike up to the summit. We get there, and the summit gift shop is open, so we could go in there and take off all of our layers, and we had like hot coffee and a donut and a cheeseburger. And you could buy they had people working it. They had retail workers up there. You could have bought an I Summited Pikes Peak t-shirt right there if you wanted to. It's just kind of a unique experience that Pikes Peak can offer.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, man, where does the time go? We get started talking about this stuff and it just goes away way too fast. But Jeff, tell us how people can get a hold of the Colorado Mountain Club so that they can learn some of these skills, find out about all the classes that you offer and the events that you have.
Sure. Yeah. I did want to point out too that I have a blog that I maintain called iceandtrail.com, and I have two blog entries that would be relevant to people listening to this podcast and interested in winter 14ers. That 10 things you need to know for hiking in the snow, and then 5 winter 14ers for beginners. So there's some good resources there. I've tried to pull a lot of what we've talked about today in there. And then the Colorado Mountain Club is, we've been around for more than 100 years, and we offer all sorts of classes ranging from intro to hiking, if you moved here and you've never been on a trail before, all the way through ice climbing and high altitude mountaineering. But we offer so much for people that are interested in winter 14ers. Basic mountaineering school would be probably the main class that will start up here can't remember the exact date, but at some point this winter, basic mountaineering school will start, and they teach basic avalanche awareness, all this gear stuff. They teach you how to use an ice axe, how to walk in crampons, all that good stuff. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's basic mountaineering school. From there, you can move into high altitude mountaineering, which basically trains people to climb mountains like Mount Rainier and Denali. And we also offer a ton, and again, I can't stress this enough, of these avalanche courses. Everything from avalanche terrain avoidance, which is one of those basic avalanche awareness seminars I was talking about earlier. We offer avalanche level 1, avalanche level 2. You can get your full certification in avalanche science through the CMC, and it's just absolutely critical information. And we offer several of those almost monthly, probably several times a month. We have some sort of avalanche school going on, and you can just go to cmc.org/schools to see all of our upcoming schools. And this time of year, most of them center around winter hiking and avalanche awareness.
Man, that's a lot of resources. Thanks for that. So cmc.org/school for avalanche training. The Colorado Avalanche Information Center, the URL, you can look up CAIC, it pops right up, but the URL is avalanche.state.co.us. And then your blog is iceandtrail.com, and I just glanced at that. Dude, it looks awesome. I'm going to have to spend some time during one of these colder winter days enjoying your blog. That's really cool.
Yeah, there's probably too many dog photos, but I try to put some real information in between those.
People love dogs, man. It's awesome. Dogs are great. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time today.
Sure, yeah, and just real quick, one more resource I wanted to throw out is there's a lot of places to get accurate and good weather forecasts, but in terms of backcountry snow reports, there's a website called opensnow.com that just has really spot on, and they're geared towards skiers. It's meant for the resort skiers and the backcountry skiers. But in terms of actually forecasting how much snow is going to fall in the mountain ranges at elevation, they have daily updates, and it's part of my morning reading along with the CAIC report.
Okay, well, I'm going to put all of these links in the show notes because they're great resources for people. And, listeners, winter mountaineering is a blast, and I would encourage anybody who's even slightly interested in what it's like to give it a shot, but do it safely, get some training first, take some friends with you, and enjoy it. It's magical. It really is. It's just magical. So, Jeff, thanks again for being with us.
Yeah, thanks a ton for having me on again. I look forward to speaking again about something else at some point.
Yeah, we'll do it, man. And for all of our listeners out there, as always, until the next show, get out there and have some fun.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to growing the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.